Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to this week's amazing episode of Surviving Life's Pickles. We are so grateful that you guys have tuned in this week to hang out with us and enjoy some of this amazing information and stories that we have for you today with our guest, Dr. John King. How are you doing?
G'day, mate. Yeah, I'm doing good, thanks. How you
I'm
going? How you
excited
going,
to have
Scotty?
you.
How you going, Hillary? Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, well
Thanks for
excited. And as I say, Hillary's here as well, and we're excited to jump into to John's story and the amazing things that he's been able to accomplish, and some of the things that he's gone through to get to that point today. But as most of you know, tuning in to these episodes, we start each one with some gratitude, and we'll just kind of go around. I'll go first, then we'll hit Hillary and finish it out with Dr. John here. But today, for me, I am so grateful to be here. Many of you know through listening to this or knowing me that March 24th of 2024 was the day I survived my suicide attempt. And so the fact that I am here this week, the week that all that happened 2 years ago, I can't be more grateful for every minute I get in life, every minute I get to enjoy beautiful people like everybody here today. And just the fact that I realize that there's a lot more to life and I don't have to do this alone. So I'm grateful for so many things today um, directly related to that. All right, Hill,
my turn.
your turn.
Uh, all right. Today I am grateful for dancing. Scott took me out on a night out on the town. We got to listen to some amazing music, and I just got to move my body and let go, feel free, and just dance. And I am so grateful for having the body capable to just get up and dance. But I'm also grateful for good music and nights out on the town like that. So, and just even the opportunity to celebrate my husband as well, because that was part of the celebration of life that we were enjoying, to go and do one of our favorite things, listen to good music. And I love to dance. So, yeah.
Thank you.
That's great.
Mhm.
My
All right,
wife
John, you're up.
Melissa would say that her grandma would say that dancing leads to shenanigans. So you got to be careful there. We won't unpack that, but I wish you well. There's
All
something
Thanks.
right.
else to celebrate today, brother.
Yeah, thank
So,
you.
for me, I don't know, man. I'm a little bit like you. Like every day I wake up breathing's a good day. I mean that sincerely. Like, I get up and I look forward to my day. I got a woman who loves me, and it's not always been the case. And I got a roof over my head. I got food in the fridge. I got a wife who loves me, a dog that tolerates me, four chickens that occasionally lay eggs. It cost me a bloody fortune in feed, and so it's really good. Just
Yeah,
life is. It hasn't always been, but it is good, and I like that. I like
that's
that.
awesome. Thank
It's
you. Thank
beautiful.
you for sharing. Well, I was getting ready for this episode and kind of researching you, John, and I really didn't know what to share to really introduce who you were, and so I kind of made the decision that I felt like I'd like you to just kind of introduce yourself and just kind of roll in and telling a little bit about your story, kind of how you got to this point now, and we'll just kind of let the conversation go. But yeah, all the table's yours, and introduce yourself. And
Well, thanks, brother. What grabbed you first, mate? Some of the stuff you're reading or
well,
researching.
for
What sort of
me, a survivor of human trafficking was one of those big things that stood out to me. And then just your vulnerability about everything that you're sharing with people and your foundation that you're working on to help others in those situations. Those are the things that immediately stood out.
Yeah, thank you. Um, so I was, my first memory is for being engaged in a sexual act, and so the period of time after that, till I got too big, and started to get some bones. With what we would call today trafficking. I didn't realize it was at the time. I just thought it was my childhood. and it was just every day for me. It was nothing different. People ask, why didn't and you think as a man, why didn't I make a stand as a child? Because that's one of the biggest parts of shame for men is why didn't I protect myself? Because that's part of the job of men that we see, that's part of what we do. And I didn't know any different. And I think when you get raised in those environments, that's one of the ways they keep you locked into it is you just don't know any different, especially if it starts young and the grooming starts young. And for me, I had recall of it back in 2008. And that's when everything came flooding back and I realized, well, okay, this isn't normal because I was a father by then and I was raising kids and, having sex with your children is not an everyday occurrence. It's like a never occurrence. And the thought of it was repugnant to me. At that stage, I couldn't even change my children's diapers, I think you call them here, and I couldn't bathe my kids. And I never knew why. I just knew that I couldn't touch my children if they were naked. It made me, it repulsed me. And I never knew why. It didn't make sense because as a parent, you're supposed to like do stuff like that. And it's kind of normal, but for me, it never was. And I changed nappies or diapers on my kids once and I couldn't do it after that. And I never bathed my children, very rarely. I rarely saw them naked. It wasn't until later I realized that these things had been such an impact on my life growing up. And I realized how it had skewed my view of everything in life. And so when I had recall of it, it was like little frames, little old 8mm frames for those of you folks that are old enough to know what they were. And then it all came together and it strung together and it just played like this continuous movie for about 7 years. Some days it still does, on and off. And I thought, oh, shitty. I was abused. It was the first time and the only time I ever called myself a victim of something. And I just intuitively knew at that point that I could never use that word again about myself. Because if I did, then I was going to be stuck in a mindset and a view of me that would destroy the rest of my life. And so for me going forward was just a battle to try and reframe those things in a usable way so I could overcome those things. And I think since 2008, these last, however many years that is, has been that journey to try and get my handle around that and manage the consequences of what was done to me and not by me.
Too. John, where did you grow up? You obviously have a strong accent.
Yeah, Dove, South Texas, love. Real South, Australia.
Okay.
From Australia. I actually only found my family 2 years ago. So I'm an Imbrani or an Aboriginal man, Indigenous Australian. So another layer to all of this is the Australian government had a policy of breeding the blackout. So melanin in Aboriginals is a recessive gene. In Africans, it's a dominant gene. So by the third generation of Imbrani or Aboriginal children, they were blonde hair and brown eyes as I was. And what part of the government policy was to split families up to try and breed the blackout, get rid of culture, get rid of language. And so 2 years ago, I reconnected with my family for the first time. And so the people that raised me were the ones that abused me.
Okay. And so you were not raised by your, I guess, traditional family, your actual blood family. You were.
Yeah. I read some statistics the other day, which are just absolutely bogus. And whoever did them, I think Tebow was talking about them, and it's just absolutely wrong, saying that 85% of all sexual abuse happens by, he said, the father at home. The statistic is that the majority of the abuse that happens in a house is actually by a step parent. It's actually not by, particularly the fathers, not by a biological father. There is something that is a pheromone that works between a biological father and the biological children, which actually works against any form of attraction. If you get into extreme pornography and stuff like that, there's another case involved there. But more than likely, it's the pheromone produced particularly by a girl that's reaching puberty, which nowadays happens from 10 or 11 in young ladies. And obviously a step parent with some sort of perversity, be it a mother or a father. And that's another issue as well. Like, 45% of traffickers and abusers are female. We've got a little bit of a Madonna complex there, and we don't think that somehow women would do that. And in my case, all my sexual abusers were female, just about 100% of them. A couple, I'm an equal opportunity victim, put it that way. But the majority of them were female. And so I think, I don't know how I got on this trope, but, I say, yeah, I don't know, I'll just stop. I just got on my
No, I
horse
mean
and had
that's
It's
fantastic information because a lot of people don't realize that females are involved in this type of thing very heavily. In the Sound of Freedom movie, the Tim Ballard story, there is the woman that's in that, and they briefly talk about her involvement, but that movie still depicts that the men are the ones that are doing the majority of it. And just from knowing Tim with Project OUR, I've learned that women are that, and then a lot of the public don't understand that that is very true, and it's hard for them to grasp
yeah.
that.
And that's a challenge I have with a few of those movies, is they're very comfortable depicting men, particularly white men, particularly white men with a Christian background or a Western background, as being the perpetrators. The stats are that boys are about 50%, 50 to 55% in America likely to be victims of trafficking. If you include non-sexual, then it goes up to 65 and 70 because of gangs, labor, and a whole range of other things. You go into any of the stands, Pakistan, Afghanistan, any of the desert stuff, it's about 85 to 95% of boys under the age of 11. Boys are
Wow.
for recreation, girls are for procreation. And the other thing they won't talk about is about 45% of the women, as I mentioned, are traffickers. We were involved in the tail end of the Epstein case, and the organization I was working with, and the guy that took over from him, a guy called Peter Nygaard. Nygaard had 125 women recruiting for him on a weekly basis for girls. So that's women recruiting for a guy. Now, we'll all want to. We need to send Nygaard to jail, absolutely. Now we need to send Epstein to jail, because whenever we catch him, if he's still alive, who knows? There's Pizzagate there. But that woman needs to go to jail. She does not
yeah.
need to get a free card. She actively recruited women, and everyone's going, "Oh, poor Maxine, she was groomed." Who gives a shit? Like, why does she get a free pass because she's got ovaries? It's like, seriously, it's just not right. And I think the need to challenge the norms is absolutely imperative. And I just think there needs to be a conversation, not about gender politics, but about human rights.
Yeah.
And the whole thing needs to, and anyone of any sense realizes that's the case. But if it doesn't perpetuate a narrative, and if it doesn't sell books or sell movies or whatever, we don't want to challenge those norms. And I think because of our reluctance to do that, we're not going to have an effective conversation, because we'll always be handing out, Weinstein
Yeah.
goes down, but Kevin Spacey gets away. So one is female and one is male. Well, Spacey's up for 125 guys. What happened to Corey, what's his name, and some of those kids in Phoenix, River Phoenix, and all of
Right.
those were sexual abuse by men, or with, I don't know, more women, I'm not sure. But we just need to be talking about this challenge within our society, and I think trying to address it as a human rights issue.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and the
Mhm.
crazy thing, and you've mentioned, people that obviously celebrities and different things that have been in the news, but recently, so we're here in Utah, and in the last 12 months, they busted one of the largest sex trafficking rings they busted in the U.S. here locally here in Utah. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was somewhere of where like 65 adults above the age of 18, and they rescued 45 kids that were on site when they had the raid. And it was just a local small town here, just a suburb of Salt Lake City, about an hour south, that nobody would have really ever thought that that goes on in their own backyard. And I think
Mhm.
that's a big reason. And one thing that we are excited and honored to have you on the show is to bring more awareness about those things that are happening in our own backyard, that people just turn an eye because they just like, oh, that doesn't happen here.
Mhm.
For me, the border was like, this is not a political statement; it's a human statement. 65 to 75% of people coming across the border were smuggled as slaves, and no one will refute those figures. At the height of the African American slave trade in the US, there was a total of 375,000 Africans enslaved by other Africans and imported by whatever those couriers were. So in America, every year there's over 2.5 million people that are enslaved in one form or another. So, I'm glad that we've had conversations in the past about slavery, and that's slavery in all cultures. And that's another
Yeah.
issue. It's all cultures that are doing this. We're going to pay reparations. We're going to have to pay a lot of money to the Irish because they were actually the very first slaves, and the Vikings are going to have to pay that, and so it goes on. So if we're
Mhm.
really going to have a conversation about slavery and modern day slavery, then we need to be looking at the human cost and and the desire that sits behind those things, which I believe is an ethical and spiritual question. And we've got to ask some of the reasons why we allow ourselves as a society, what drives that um, degradation and that need to be degenerates. And so that's a whole other spiritual question. But we've got to have those sorts of conversations and real conversations and ask issues of our souls that are often going to be uncomfortable questions. That why do we continue perpetrate these atmospheres of lust? And why does it end up manifesting against the most vulnerable within our society?
Yeah, it's very well
Yeah,
put. I
very
mean,
well
it
put.
is it is the most vulnerable because children are just children. They don't know.
Yeah.
They do what they're told. If an adult's telling them or asking them to do something, they figure it's okay because that's what they're supposed to do. That's how they've been raised, is listen to the adults. So and again, it's a culture thing of making more awareness, being open, talking about this, letting people know. And the big thing for us is I mean, I have three daughters they're adults now, but we have two teenage boys at home still. And it's having these conversations openly so they understand the risks that are out there. And they understand that it's not okay if people talk like this or people approach them or do different things.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm sure you have, but my encouragement to everyone is, have the same conversation with your boys as you do with your girls. So we'll talk to our girls about being aware of manipulative predator men. I'm pretty sure your wife knows a few manipulative predator women. And if we're
Yeah.
only telling our girls to beware of, if we're telling everyone that some white man's going to walk up and kidnap a brown girl, then we're going to miss the Asian woman who's going to kidnap the white boy. And the ratios of doing that are about close enough to half and half by both scenarios, child and adult, that we should be preparing our sons. And if you have a look at these cases that are coming out now about these teachers in their 20s who are
Mhm, mhm,
actively grooming, actively, and now if they were actively, a guy was actively grooming young girls and 13 and 14, having sex with them at 16 and 17, there'd be an incredible outcry. Okay, so now what we get is the occasional social media splash. We might get a post on X or something about some 22-year-old woman who's now pregnant by, having gangbangs with a bunch of kids. We'll let it go because all boys are supposed to enjoy sex like that. The reality is those boys are going to grow up and they're going to be either heavy into pornography, they're going to repeat the violations themselves, or they're going to end up coming and understanding one day what was done to them and how it skewed their sexuality for the rest of their life. Now, we'd have all the support available for young girls, but still, in 2026, there's only one house in Justin, Texas for boys that have been trafficked. And if you think
mhm.
of the number of houses for women and girls, I think there could be another house coming into Georgia, but still, it's two at
Wow.
best.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's crazy. Well, one
that's
thing that's
that's
kind of
that's
on
unacceptable.
it is, it's unacceptable. And I
Mhm,
mean, I get that the more we talk about it, I can't stress it enough with anybody that's listening is this needs to be talked about. I mean, we need to be openly discussing this with our friends, our family, our coworkers, and our communities so that we all understand and we can start paying attention to all of the evil that is just right around us. But one thing I want to do is I want to kind of go back. You said that 2008 for you was when all of this came up to fruition, per se, where you realized what actually had happened. And I want to kind of go back to that and talk about how did you work through that? What type of methods, therapy, different things that helped you to start to deal with that and become the person you are today?
Um, Thank you. Great question. Uh, first of all, I tried to find places. I tried to go to rape centers, church support groups, victim support groups, and there was nothing. I approached them and I was told I was a man. Men don't get raped. Men can't be sexually abused. And I was a predator who was trying to, you know, use these groups for, my own, deviant means. Wasn't my finest day. I did tell a couple of church secretaries to go and fire truck. It wasn't necessarily my best moment. So I just read 200 books. I got books on everything. At this stage, we weren't talking about PTSD per se, even this is 20 years ago. Close to. We weren't talking about post-traumatic stress as all as a society, let alone complex post-traumatic stress. So I went back to the Napoleonic War, where they talk about heart tremors in soldiers, and then into the Civil War, and they talk about soldiers' heart. And then I ended up looking from that into the start of the conversations about, trauma and impact of PTSD coming, then Patton in World War II, and then back over into PTSD coming back from the Gulf War. And I started to realize what I was dealing with. And so I read these books and did what I could. And I did end up seeing a therapist for a period of time. It was just a short period of time, because I knew a therapy would not cure me. And it was going to be my responsibility. But what I needed was some more tools for my toolbox. I needed some things to be able to put. And part of it was that I'm a Christian man, and part of it was a spiritual journey for me, of understanding that God was my heavenly Father, not my fairy godmother. And I was going to have to get my butt out of bed every day and go to my shed and read a book, read my Bible, smoke a cigar, because you can't do coffee and Christ without a cigar. One of those. So I was going to have to do those things, and it was going to be my responsibility. And the picture I had in my head is like a little red toolbox your granddaddy used to have, with a little black handle on the top and a black lid. And every day I would go and I'd read a new book and I'd study a new thing and I'd put another tool in my toolbox. And the thought and the impression I was given was that if I did that and I had tools in my toolbox, then I would have the things to be able to manage the situations as I go forward into life. And probably one of the biggest understandings at that point, a revelation for me of trauma, was that trauma is never healed. It's not a healed. You don't cure trauma. You manage trauma. So that gave me permission to, every day of my life, have to have tools that I have access to manage what I deal with and live with. And the church doesn't have a good doctrine on suffering or mental illness. You can't cast devils of PTSD out. You can't fast PTSD out. You've got to manage this on a daily basis. And so I think for any sort of trauma, and I think looking at both of your testimonies and your biographies, like the aspects of addiction that you've been through in a married relationship, what you very graciously mentioned about a suicide attempt, your wife having lead through, all of those are trauma issues that still need to be managed, talked about, and discussed and mitigated for going forward. And I think that's part of what you have to do, is understand that this is an ongoing process. Trauma is an ongoing thing that you have to deal with. And it doesn't, just because you're dealing with it doesn't mean you're broken. And I think that's part of it, is time doesn't heal trauma. I think what time does is sometimes put miles between the event and you. And unless you're actively processing that, they don't disappear. They become numb, addicted, shame, bad relationship, overwork, insomnia, secretlessness, and so it goes on. And I looked at the arc and just the bios I did when I was reading on both of you. And my first question is, well, what precipitated those things? What was the root cause? Because you can't get good fruit off a bad tree. So there's got to be things that started these journeys. And at some point, you have to come to terms with, okay, I need to unpack something here. I've got to deal with this, because if I don't deal with this, then up here, this is still going to be a problem. And so for me, I was just, fortunately blessed with the spiritual gift of stubbornness and bloody mindedness. I know, Ephesians talks about a lot of other things, but for me, the 10th gift is just bloody mindedness. And it's like, I have to work out how this works. What is this thing that I need to get my hands around?
So
was really
beautifully
just,
put.
yeah. And for you, it sounds like it was defining those moments. Once you had that 8 millimeter tape, it was putting them in order, defining what they are so that you could then work on them. on a continuous basis.
Um, Great, good comment. I let me think about that for a minute. I don't know if I define it, because how do you define being anally raped because you didn't clean up your room? I don't think you can. And I think that's the nature of trauma. Like, you've got a filing cabinet in your mind and you've got memories, and you put, Christmas and Easter in there and honeymoons, and then you've got anal rape sitting on top of it, and you don't know where to put that in your life experience. So it sits there, and every time the window of the study of your soul opens, it blows everywhere and everything blows up. I think for me, I went through a lot of times of trying to reconcile these things, these events, and try and put them in an order. I think when I realized that there was no place for them in a normal life or a human experience, that I was going to have to actually learn to sit with them. And there's a concept amongst the Mbrani when we deal with grief. And, we've had 7 generations or more, 200 and something years of colonialism and destruction of our people. And as a people, we learn to sit with our grief. Frank Herbert talks in Dune about fear being the widow maker. And instead of running from fear, you allow fear to pass through you. And that's the concept for us as sitting with something. And I think when I came to stop fighting against what was done to me, and be that from an angry point of view, or I'm going to forgive, whatever, that with all that effort you put into it, and just allowing these things to wash over me and realize they couldn't hurt me anymore. And I understand this all sounds like I've got my shit together, but, like, to be honest, like this yesterday, like this stuff, and I thank you for your graciousness that I appear to have my crap together. I kind of, my doctorate's in theology. I tell people it's turning shit into fertilizer. All I've done is scrape all this stuff together, and something beautiful now appears to be growing out of it. And so I don't want anybody out there listening to this thinking you ever get to a place where you arrive. Every day you're trying to make better with this life you have, regardless of whatever the trauma, if it's addiction, if it's abandonment, if it's abuse, if it's just whatever it is that you're going through. And so I think that's part of what it is, brother, is that you're learning to make the most out of these things. And I never reconciled those frames, because you can't reconcile being used to sexually satisfy a dinner party full of female guests. There's nothing, you can't reconcile that. There's no coming to terms with that. But what there is turning those scars of shame into medals of honor. I survived that. This washes through me. It does not define me. My past will either refine me or define me. So I'm not going to allow this to refine me. I'm going to use this as motivation to make me into a better man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the art. I think, I'm making this up as I go, I think that is the art that has propelled me, is this decision to not allow what was done to me to define me, but allow it to refine me. And I think that's a thing that I did intuitively that has allowed me to not move beyond it, but move through it into something more fruitful.
Yeah.
Yeah. It often reminds me of the word recovery. We use that in 12-step groups. We use it in grief groups. We don't say that we're cured, we say we're in recovery. And because it's not something that just goes away. And those thoughts, those feelings can be dampened a little bit, but it's still always going to be there. And we like to say we are recovering because every day is still a struggle. Some days it's less, some days it's more, but you're constantly continuing to try to better yourself. And everything that you stated in your comments there just proves that. Me and Scott, we don't have our shit together all the time. We still have many struggles that we go through all the time. It's just constantly trying to better ourselves and constantly trying to remember the tools that we have in our toolbox to use to keep us in a good place, or to keep bettering ourselves, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And you said it well. My cousin, black fell away. He's a recovering alcoholic, and he was talking the other day, and he said, I've always got one more lapse in me, but I don't know if I've got one more recovery in me. And I think that's a great way to look at it, not as a victim, but as being very wise. You know, I
Mhm.
fell off this wagon numerous times, but now I'm back on it. I don't know if I can do it again. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, this allows me to, you know, manage this thing with a different aspect, a future focus, which I think is really important to be future focused as opposed to looking back at the issues we caused and the problems we had. You know,
Correct.
being a future focused.
Mhm.
Well, one thing that keeps coming to mind that I feel inclined to share with you is so part of my recovery is I ended up doing some ketamine therapy because my body just would not let me visit some of those traumatic events. And in one of those sessions, there was this moment where I was working through these struggles and I kept opening up these struggles one by one. And then I would throw them in my backpack and my backpack kept getting bigger and I was climbing up this mountain and I had people behind me that were cheering me on. But as I kept going, I was opening things and putting them in my backpack, trying to reach the top. But when I reached the top of that mountain that I could see, I was stronger. I was physically and mentally in a better spot, but then I turn and look and guess what? There's 3 more mountains ahead of me because it's an ongoing process. It is, uh, continually, like you said, refining how you deal with those on a daily basis and not letting them define you. And I look at it as you take care of your body by breaking muscles down, building them so they get stronger. We need to do the same thing with these activities and different things in our head. Just like you described, is you need to acknowledge them and say, look, I'm not going to let this define me, but I'm going to let this make me better. And I'm going to work through it today again if I need to. I'll work through it tomorrow if I need to, and it's that ongoing process of always trying to be 1% better that next day.
Fantastic. I love the fact you just said 1%. Um, Love it. You're the first person I've heard use that phrase, and it's a phrase I use often. We live in a 30, you know, popcorn plus 30 seconds culture. Yeah, ding, we just want it over, as opposed to grandma who just did it the good old way. And I was out with my flight instructor one day and we were flying. He said, I want you to dial in. We're going to head, you know, due west, but I want you to dial into 98, 99. And then we got a couple of 100 miles over and he said, look how far you are from the airport. He said, 1 degree makes a difference. And I realized that what I was doing was I was beating myself up so much because I was so desperate to be a better man. And I'd get up and just try, and it'd last 3 days, and I'd devolve. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to just try. I'm going to lower my expectations because disappointment comes from unmet expectations. I'm going to lower my expectations. So I thought 1% a day, and I thought, well, that's stupid. I can't even go to the gym every day I'm supposed to. So that's 365%. I'd be 3 times a different man. That's dumb. I can't do that. Okay, well, what about 1% a week? Well, you know, so that'd take me, you know, what? You know, I'd be a different man in 2 years. Man, ain't gonna happen. I'm gonna get 1%. So the thing I settled on was 1% a month. If I could just change 1% a month in 8 years, I'd be a different guy. So I'm 16 years in now. And there's, you know, I've gone from John 1.0 to John 2.0. I'm coming into John 3.0, and I can feel it. I can feel it. For the first time in my life, I feel I got my feet under me. And it's about long. I worked out it takes about $300,000. For me, it took $300,000 and 15 years to recover. It's a very expensive program. And that's actually why we started doing what we're doing. And even in the human trafficking space, we're involved in this stuff. And the thing that distressed me the most is that we're going to go and rescue or save these kids and do nothing about their recovery whatsoever. But every person takes 10 years and $10,000 a year. So that's $100,000 per person to recover. And we weren't doing anything to facilitate that. So we actually moved away from what we were doing. Once we got through into the NIGAR stuff, we were spending $1 million a month on keeping probably 12 people in protective custody in the US. And they were worse off as addicts and addicted to pornography, both the boys and the girls, than they were. And all they wanted to do was to be the next Kim Kardashian. You know, they wanted to get their tapes back from NIGAR so they could publish them themselves. And it's like, dude, this is really sick. Like, we're not helping these people. What we're doing is corralling them till they give evidence, and then we're actually re-trafficking them. And what I mean by that, we're taking them and we're taking out their stories. We're raising money to protect them, and these kids aren't getting any better. So I had a major issue with how that was being processed. because we're spending no effort in trying to get these people to recover. And that's really where my focus has been, and in the programs we've developed. As I said, $300,000 in 15 years is making that obtainable and accessible to people so that they can actually change.
Yeah.
Well,
I-
let's dive into that a little bit more. What is the name of your foundation, and kind of
Sure.
what are the nuts and bolts of what you guys, what your mission is, and what you're doing on a daily?
So the foundation is called Give Them a Voice, and we fund it through our own private enterprise. And the reason we do that is when I was working in the trafficking space, the organizations that had the big banquets, I didn't trust them because I knew that we were flying under the radar, working directly with Congress on a few things, and I was getting death threats. I was being followed. I had to ring police, SWAT numerous times. I had to pull an AR over my bonnet of my car a couple of times because I'm living in suburbia, man, and I've got devices planted on my cars, and we're working totally off the radar. So I thought, you know what, there's a whole range, and I was aware of some money laundering that was happening and a few things that was really distressing. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to take my effort and move it into recovery. So 15 years, 300,000, as I said, my wife and I have taken all that knowledge and information and put it together in something called the Phoenix Collective. And if someone wants to do it, they can go and they can watch this. There's a couple of books they get for free. They get a 5-minute video a day and a 10-minute exercise. And if they will do that, they will see the change that happens over time. And it is designed to be micro steps. It is not designed to be consumed. And if they're going to be like me, they'll consume everything and then go back to the beginning and just consume it again and again and again. And that's the aim of the program. It's not a monthly subscription. Just like, you know, if they go from your show with the word podcast, it's going to cost them $27 for life instead of $97. It's the price of a lunch. So if they're worth the price of a lunch, they're going to get the books, the training, everything, access to monthly calls and stuff, because that's what I would have needed. And that's the reason I did it, for what I would have needed to recover. And my first marriage imploded. My first wife, she ended up not being a nice person. It was just really difficult, estranged from my children. And I thought, I want to try and stop people from going through that, because no one should have to. We should all have a chance at saving our marriages, saving our children, our relationships with them, because it's bad enough traumatically what we went through. To add on that a whole bunch of guilt associated as adults is like just stupid.
Yeah, I think so many people hear about human trafficking, saving, the children coming out of the human trafficking, but they don't necessarily think of what it takes to actually get these kids in recovery and get them help once they're out. I think that's an afterthought, and it shouldn't be, because just pulling them out of those situations isn't completely helping them. They have no resources. They have no childhood, and often most of them don't have any families as well. No
Yeah, you're
support
right.
system.
You're
So
absolutely right, Hillary. Yeah.
yeah, it's absolutely amazing that you saw a need of something that you needed when you were coming out of it. You went out, you resourced, nobody was there to help you. There were no resources. So I have to commend you for seeing the need and providing these children with these resources.
Well, thanks. And I got to tell you, wasn't doing it. It was purely selfish. I was just trying to survive. And I
Well, it
suppose I
always
looked
is.
back on it and I thought, nah, you know what? I should really do something with this. I've learned all this stuff, but I think I just wish that these organizations doing it would take a little bit of time and a little bit of the money they raise and say, every person that we are apparently rescuing is going to need a lot of support. And it's not a month of therapy. Like, come on now. I spent 12 years, 13 years in that environment. It's like, so you're going to tell me I need a month of therapy? It's
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. Duh. It's
No.
like telling you guys, hey, listen, you've been drinking 20 years. I want you to come to this one AA meeting and then you're done.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that doesn't work. That's just enough money to save up for the next bottle of hooch. That's the only
Mhm.
reason. That's all you can do in 30 days because you're broke and you're homeless. Yeah, I just need to go sell some blood and I'll get some more money. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, righto. That didn't work, did it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And we
No, and
work
I
in a
know
like
that
drug and
alcohol, but we don't apply it to kids.
yeah,
right.
I work in a drug and alcohol treatment center, and we hear it all the time with it's an inpatient 30, 60, 90 days.
Yeah.
You get an alcoholic that's been drinking for 30 years and they come in and think that they're going to be cured after 30 or 60 or 90 days. And they don't understand that once they leave the treatment center, that they need to continue to keep doing the things that they were taught. It's only a foundation
Yeah.
that they're getting.
Yeah. And I think I know this will sound horrible and I'll probably get hate mail. So I'm sorry for your behalf, but I think it's a disservice.
It
I,
is.
it is. There's a story in the Bible about casting out these devils. And these devils went away, and then 7 days later they came back with twice as many. I think that's the case in recovery. So you want to cure me, you want to give me this, I'm going to have 30 or 60 days, and it's going to go. And more often than not, it comes back with twice the force.
Mhm.
And that's been my
Yeah.
experience, and that's been the experience with dealing with people. It's like, I always tell people, if say, look, John, I want to pray with you. Okay, if you want to pray with me, then you've got to be prepared to walk with me. If you're going to pray with me that I get hold, who's going to be there in a week's time when I need someone? And I love that with the AA system, with your sponsors, I think you call it. Having someone who's prepared, who's been there, walk with you through that, to keep those doors shut, and also to keep open the doors of possibility and hope. Because
Yeah.
it's not only shutting the old doors, it's opening up the next right doors. So
Mhm.
you've got something that's filling this void, filling this space, because alcohol does fill something. The
Mhm.
reason you're on drugs is it fills something. The reason you're engaged in pornography is it fills something.
Mhm.
And so if you're not filling it with something, then it's still a vacuum, you know?
Yeah.
Nature
Yeah.
abhors a vacuum.
Well, I think that's what I love about what you're doing is it's a daily thing. 5 minutes a day, hitting this, spending a little time because you need to feel. Um, my wife sometimes she giggles at me because I do this. But in the morning, I've started this routine. I've got some songs that just they're kind of prayers for me in the morning. They really help me encourage myself and start the day out. And I've shared this on the show multiple times, but I'll get these and I'll be in the kitchen making the boys their lunches for school, listening to this music and just bawling because
Oh,
I
yeah,
want to
mate. I'm
start
a
the
big
day to
cool.
feel.
Go it, bro. Cry your eyes out. Be embarrassing. Fill that beard
Yeah.
full of snot. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, it's powerful to realize that you need to feel these things when you've been numb for so long, whatever you've gone through, your traumatic event, whatever it's been through, you don't want to feel that because it was painful, but you need to be able to feel things going forward. So it's okay to feel those emotions. It's okay to express them because once you're expressing them and feeling those, then you're not feeling it with the negative energy. You're not feeling it with those things that are haunting you per se in the past. Is you're able to process them and again refining yourself by feeling these new emotions every day. So I think it's powerful
That's
what you're doing is energizing people with a little activity every day to continue that road to recovery.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
John,
Mm.
what was your moment of realization that you needed to do something more? When did that come to you?
When you say something more, what do you mean with that?
So the inspiration behind the foundation, the inspiration that you needed to help these children, that you needed to do a little bit more. What was the moment that kind of inspired you to start that?
2015. Just before that, I was writing some poetry anonymously. I'd written poetry to try and process. John 1.0 was very analytical, goal driven, sort of like a right brain guy. John 2.0, after the recall, he just wanted to smoke cigars and write poetry. Totally. He didn't understand John 1.0. He didn't like John 1.0. He was like, dude,
Uh-huh.
that guy is so anal. Like, what the hell's going on with that? I just want to sit around and suck a stogie and just sit in the sun. And so, those two guys have been reconciling themselves for a long time now. And so when I went through that process, I started to try and, as we often do, we use art to try and understand things that our consciousness can't understand, but our subconscious can get a handle on. And I was writing poetry, and this group approached me, and they wanted to. There was so here I am, like I'm 6 foot, bodybuilder. There's a whole bunch of these like Buddhist nuns, and I'm a Christian man, ex preacher, because you can't get divorced in Texas. You're better off shooting your wife in Texas if you're a preacher, because then you'll go to jail and you'll have a testimony. But if you get divorced because you're mentally ill, it's like you're a pariah. So here I am sitting in this flat, and I've got a mattress on the floor, or flat apartment, a mattress on the floor and cinder block bookcases. I was like back at college again. And I got this email from this group. I was a bit of a unicorn. I was male, abused, and prepared to talk about it. And they asked me to be in this documentary. And so there's four things that I live my life by. Is number one is to try and be authentic. And number two is imagine a future I want to inhabit. Number three, allow those truths to set my goal. And number four is, live Sisu. So here I was in this room trying to be authentic because I was a really good liar. I really am. I was a good liar. Being authentic is very difficult because I had to lie to survive as a child. So my whole childhood was lying. And then even coming forward, I'm autistic, so I've got a series of masking behaviors I've developed to present whatever anyone wanted to know to make everybody else comfortable. So my whole life has been this battle with authenticity.
Huh.
So these people approached me and said, look, we want to do this. And I just knew that I wanted a different future than my past. And in order to get a new thing, you got to do a new thing. And I remember talking to Melissa at the time. She was just a friend, on the fringes of life. And she said, don't do this. This is the worst thing you'll ever do. And she was probably right. Could have set me back years. But I knew that if I didn't run at this thing, then this thing was going to always own me. And so I did this documentary, Stopping Traffic, and I went on, it won 80 awards and all these sorts of things. And when I went around doing that, every time we would have a public showing, there'd be 300 people there, and it'd be like 100 guys would walk up, and all they ever did was want to shake my hand or hug me and say thank you. And they were often standing with their wives or their kids, and they'd never told their wife or their children what happened to me. And I was sitting there, and I'd like to say very prayerfully, I said, "Oh, thou Lord, God of all wisdom, thank you." I said, "Oh, fuck, I've got to do something about this, because here's a whole bunch of blokes out here, and no one is being a voice to them. No one is saying, it's all right, mate, you're okay. Your life went through hard. You are, and I don't say that lightly, but that's what a lot of guys go through. That the biggest confusion is about their sexuality. They can't define that because no one's talking to them about it. And it's like, okay, well, their whole sexuality, everything's messed up in their life. Well, they're so in bondage to pornography, and they don't realize why. And so I thought, you know what? I just need to do something. I need to try and help these men, regardless of whatever their current lifestyle is. I just need to help these men. And it really started there. It was I'd love to say I had this epiphany and I need to turn all this stuff around and make it into this beautiful. It never was that. It was like I brought 3 boxes of cigars and locked myself in a garage in Texas in 115-degree heat and wrote my memoir, Deal With It, Living Well with Trauma. And that's the one that Melissa's in there. She, at the end of every chapter, she talks about what it was like to walk with me through this process. And it really started from there, is seeing that there was a need, that no one else was bringing that voice forward. And I just wanted to do that. Now it's as simple as that. And so, I think John 1.0 really liked five-year goals plans, 5-year plans. John 2.0 thinks that's bullshit. And like you're flat out getting up this morning and trying to work out what to do. So I'm gone with him for a while now. And John 3.0 is having conversations with him about having a bit of future focus. So, which is what the next stage of John 3.0 will look like. But every day it was just get up, put a tool in my toolbox and see if I can help someone.
Yeah.
And first of all, help myself, because that's the most beautiful, selfish thing you can ever do. Okay, how can I get better? Because then if I get better as a man, then my family's going to benefit from it. And that's really important. And then as a byproduct of me being a better man in the world, I'm hoping the world is a better place.
Yeah.
And it's
It's so
absolutely
beautiful.
beautiful. I mean, that's one of our mantras, our themes that we spread throughout anytime we're doing any events or even on the show is, turning that pain into purpose and taking it. You've learned a lot from what you've been through, and just by being vulnerable and sharing, you're helping people. And you've now
Mhm.
taken that to the next level with what you're doing with the foundation. And that's just amazing. I can only imagine how many people you've already helped just with what you've been doing and how many more are still to come.
I hope so, mate. Well, it's all right. If I help you, it's been a good Thursday. Like
Yeah.
helped the lady earlier on today. Well, that was good. Helped another fella
Mm.
somewhere. I don't
Yeah.
know, man. Like I didn't get into this for fame. Like I think it's the Stoic philosophers that talk about the sorts of things you can buy into. No one ever signs on for that. It's just a really shallow thing.
Mhm.
And the concept of helping one person at a time, like in today's society, that's seen as having really small goals. But you help enough one people, and all of a sudden you're at 10, and all of a sudden you're at 100. And you do that for 10 years, well, then maybe that's 1,000 people you help. That's not 1,000 people. That's 1,000 men, say. Now that's at least 4 or 5 people that he touches, and immediately. And every person has an influence on at least another 100
Mhm.
people. So I'm kind of thinking exponentially, just focusing on one that leads to 10, that leads to 100, that leads to 500, that leads to 10,000 or 100,000. I'm hoping that my life causes a ripple. And there's people I don't know and I'll never meet that somehow someone who got hold of some part of something that had some fruit into it, just like what you guys do with your recovery things. It's
Mhm.
never the people in front of us that we see that benefits, the people that we don't see that we really want to help.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I want to ask you, because that he really hits home with us. I mean, that was the whole idea of, we just had this idea of we needed to help people. We didn't know how. And so we decided, hey, let's try this podcast thing. It seems like a way that maybe we can reach some people. And it was just find that one person that we can touch. And we feel like we accomplished it. And I feel like we've touched that one person, but it has multiplied, which is fantastic. And through that journey, we've had people that I've never met come up to me in a store or reach out to us through the website, through an email, just to say something or comment on one of the episodes. And that for me, it just makes me feel like, okay, I'm going to get up every day and I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. But I wanted to ask you, have you had some of those experiences where people have reached out, and is there one or two that really stand out to you, that really touched you, that really just make you get up in the morning when you remember that and say, I'm going to do this again today?
Oh yeah, made a bunch, like we're privileged to still be getting, we get emails often about it. And the Phoenix Collective being really good for that is because it gives us a chance to have direct input into strangers and see their lives change. So that's really rewarding. Um, there's lots of stories really, and lots of stories from a lot of stories from wives about
Huh.
how their husband was touched. That's the one. I remember one lady ringing me up, mate, and she, you know, who the fuck are you? So, oh, what? Why? What the fuck have you done to my husband? What do you mean? He's in the roof, in the attic, and he's crying, and he's been in there for 3 days. You sent him a book. Oh,
Mm.
righto. Well, sorry about that. And so I met this fella, and tip of the spear guy. I mean, Vietnam and every war since then, and it was never what he did overseas that was a challenge to him. It was what was done to him as an 11-year-old boy that he'd never told anybody about. And we do a lot of work with veterans and police around military sexual trauma or childhood adverse conditions. And a lot of our war fighters were abused as kids, about up to 85% of them. And the same in police. Police are 4 to 5 times more likely to have adverse childhood conditions than non-law enforcement. Like 30% of all people who go in as be EMT, by the time they're 3 months as rookies, they're exhibiting signs of heavy post-traumatic stress because of childhood conditions. And so this one guy, man, it was never what was done he did in the sand. It was what was done to him as a child because, um, as men, one of the biggest challenges we have is, even though we were only 9 or 10 at the time, we should have been able to do something to stop that person hurting me or doing this to me. And there's still that's that part of, masculinity. We want to be fighters and we want to be strong enough to be able to push back on that. And we weren't. And we hold all that shame and guilt because we can't process it. It doesn't work with our psyche of how we were created. And so, I met them one Thanksgiving. They were up here by where we live. And they were there. We found out they were there. And I went and I had had a beard down to his belly, tough as fucking nails. And we stood in the foyer of this hotel. Two big bets like you and I, Scotty, if we ever met, mate, standing in the foyer of a hotel, crowded with Thanksgiving, crying, sobbing, howling at the top of our voice. It's somewhat of a scene. You start to attract a few security guards. It's all good, bro. This guy, no, I never met him, man. And sitting around, and he's with his grandkids, and grandma's going, it's okay, granddaddy's fine. Well, why does that man make him cry? Well, the man didn't make him cry. He's crying on the man. Well, who is the man, and why is he crying on the man? Well, don't worry about it. You'll never why granddaddy's doing it. And so, yeah, man, it's a privilege. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to turn shit into fertilizer. It's a privilege when your pain, as you said very eloquently, your pain becomes purpose. And people can look and go, well, if that guy made it, yeah, I can make it too. And I think that's the greatest thing that people like us can do is people go, huh, that guy turned scars of shame into medals of honor. He's okay. If he's okay, I'm okay. If she's okay, I'm okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I love how you've illustrated that story for us to see you guys there in that hotel lobby. And it just brings me to moments in the last couple years as I've been really working on getting through this and knowing how to deal with everything on a daily basis. My boys like to tease me that, hey, Dad, let's go to this movie so we can watch you cry. Let's go do this so we can see Dad cry. But it's opened that door for them a little bit to understand that it's okay to feel it. And it's not something shameful to feel real feelings, authentic feelings. If you're feeling these things, it doesn't matter if you're in public amongst strangers. It doesn't matter if you're in public with family. When you need to feel these feelings, it's okay to feel them because that's your right as a human being. And I think that's what so many people that have had, been trafficked or had tragic events done to them at the young age is they don't know it's okay. They just don't understand that it's okay to be human and to feel these things. They're taught that you can't. And that's one thing that we're really working on here with people that we talk to is a real man isn't a tough guy. A real man isn't the guy who, goes smash his hand with a hammer and not cry about it. A real man is he's going to walk up to you and he's going to tell you I love you sincerely and give you a hug with tears in his eyes. And that's really some of this thought process and things that we're teaching because a lot of our work currently is in the construction and mining industry because that's where I spent all my career. And it's the two biggest industries that are struggling with this the very most. And it's amazing to see some of these guys. I mean, just a couple weeks ago, I had a 300 plus man. I mean, this guy makes me look small. And I showed up to his job site and we had done a suicide prevention class there a couple weeks before. And he walks up to me and just tears in his eyes and gives me a hug and just says, I just need somebody to tell me it's okay today. And that right there,
yeah, that's it, man.
It is. That's what we need to do.
Yeah. I run something once a month, every second Saturday called Man Church. Man Church Online. It's for fellas. All their wives sit and watch it on Instagram or TikTok. I do that because then the guys don't have to go home and tell the missus what they talked about on Man Church. But at the end of it, for questions and answers, we always turn it off. Brother, you got 40 guys and we turn it off. We do the teaching. We turn it off. Bro, I mean, it's onions. Guys are sharing their lives, their stories, their struggles, how they want to be a better man, how they want to be a better father. And it's a bunch of the hardest, biggest pussies you'll ever meet. They're all crying and snot's going everywhere. Half the time the guys go, oh, righto, you talk, I'm fine. You know, it's like, it's just bloody brilliant. We're sitting
It's
there.
beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's Christ, coffee, and cigars. And you sit there and you talk about things, spiritual things that are important to you. And I actually think it's the group of people who don't like men that are out there in our society today that are actually defining. They're telling us that our definition of masculinity is wrong. They're the ones defining masculinity. Because if you have a look down through history, men are poets, men are chefs, men are artists, men are writers, men are fighters. We are savers. We want to save people, protect. We're builders. That's like the definition of whoever it is you are, a man. It's like, bro, get up and put your pants on. Like that defines it. And just get out there and do the things. We are protectors, correctors, and directors. We're supposed to be prophet, priest, and king. And just get out there and do whatever you got to do to get it done, man. Love one woman as hard as you can. Look after your kids. Don't let them embarrass you in public. If they do, just whoop them, take them home. Like, tell people like a 2-year-old who's a brat in public is going to be a 20-year-old who's a brat in public. So just deal with it, man. Like deal with it. If you don't like being with your own kids, deal with it. Like just make them so it's not embarrassing, you know. And just it's okay. Like just whatever it is, man. Like some guys like fishing, some guys like hunting, some guys like doing jigsaw puzzle. It's all good. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I love that.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, well, as we're kind of wrapping up here, John, I have to say, first of all, I have to say thank you. I mean, the insights and the stories that you shared have, I mean, touched my heart personally today. And I know they're touching people that are listening as well. But we always like to end asking a couple questions. The first question I have for you today is, if you had to share one piece of advice that was given to you that really has stuck with you throughout your life, what would that be?
Be graceful towards yourself. Measure yourself grace. Living is a shit show. Life turns up and it beats you. And just give yourself grace. It's okay. Yeah, you did. Melissa taught me so many things. And the thing she would often say to me is, you did the best you could at the time with the knowledge that you had. And so you don't have the right to beat. She said that, and she would always say, when I said something negative about myself, she would say, don't speak to my best friend like that. And I think there have been two important lessons for me. Did I make mistakes as a man, a husband, and a father? Yeah, but I did the best I could at the time. I was a very sick man, and I was just fighting to survive. And I did the best I could with the information I had at the time. I did the best I could with the support system I had at the time. I made the best decisions I could when I was very mentally ill at the time. And then to be able to speak and measure the same grace I would measure to you, to myself, is like I would give you lots of grace for where you've come from and give you lots of grace because of the journey you're on. And am I very stringent on myself? I expect a lot of myself, but I think that's okay. And it's good to do that. But I can expect a lot of myself, but at the same time, measure the same amount of grace back to myself. And I think I get two for the price of one. They're probably two things that have been, fundamentally important to me.
Oh, those are absolutely powerful. And, to piggyback that, the second question is, from that first question, what else would you add to that to somebody else to give them some guidance? I don't like the word advice. I like the word guidance or knowledge that they can take from this to better themselves for tomorrow.
I was in the middle of this shitstorm. My marriage was imploding. My church was imploding. My businesses were imploding. Everything. I was losing everything. And I had an old boxing coach. I had this old boxing gym I built. It was a old brick shed. It was like about 135 degrees inside. And It was just fantastic. And my boxing coach, I was fighting a guy he'd heard. He was about 26. He went on to be like Everlast or whatever it is, middleweight champion. And he heard about this old preacher who ran this boxing gym, and he wanted to come up for a warm-up for his competition. And he trained 2-minute rounds in, 76 degrees, and I trained 3-minute rounds in 115, 120 degrees. And coach said, I just want you to cover up. I just want you to cover up. I want you to tuck your chin and throw punches. And he said, this is going to hurt you. And there's going to come a point where he hits 2 minutes, and that's all he's ever trained for. And when I say go, you've hit 2 minutes. He's going to have nothing left. He said, but you're older, you've trained harder, and you're nastier. He said, tuck your chin and throw punches. Last time I saw that kid, he was standing outside the gym throwing up. I beat the shit out of him. And because I'm old and nasty and I can tuck my chin and throw punches. And so the one thing I'd add to all the grace and all the yummy talk is tuck your chin and throw punches. Good air in, bad air out. Tuck your chin and throw punches. And something will move. Life will move for you. Will make the way for a man who will tuck his chin and throw punches. Don't ever get up. Get up every morning with gratitude. Have a sing, have a cry, and then throw like your life depends upon it.
I love it.
Absolutely.
That's
That is definitely words of wisdom to live by. I appreciate you sharing those.
Cheers, man.
Oh,
Mhm.
well,
Yeah,
as
thank
the
you.
final question we usually do is, John, we like to change the table, turn it to you now. We've learned a lot about you, but we like to let our guests ask a couple questions before we sign off to us. To get to know us a little bit more, to ask anything that maybe has been on your mind, because this is the first time we've really had the time to sit and chat. So we'll kind of turn the time over to you for a couple questions that maybe have been on your mind about us.
2 years ago, suicide attempt. What precipitated that?
As of what led up to that?
Yeah, what led up to that
Um,
for you?
well, I was in the middle of fighting cancer, dealing
Yeah.
with just awful medical things going on. I was in a very toxic work environment and dealing with an ex-wife and just life in general, that everything seemed like it all came down to me. And all of those things led me back to addiction.
Yeah.
And I got very heavy. And like you had said, sometimes you can get back into the addiction and it hits you 2 or 3 or 4 times harder the
Yeah.
next time you go back in. It hits hard, and it did. It got to that point where Hillary was gone for the weekend. My boys were with their mom, and I was home, and I'm just like, I'm done. I don't want to feel anymore. I don't want to be here, and I don't want to have my family watch me suffer. And that that's what led up to that point.
What was your response, Hillary, when you came home that weekend and you found out about that?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't actually find out about it until weeks later. But when I came home, he- the moment I walked in the door, he gave me a big hug and was just sobbing. I knew something was wrong. I kept asking him over and over, what's wrong? What happened? And he wasn't ready to fully tell me what happened yet. He just kind of brushed it off and said, I just really missed you. It's been a hard weekend. I was very lonely. I'm just really glad you're home. But I knew deep down something was wrong. And I was willing to let him take the time he needed to own up to it or to finally let me know. When I did fully find out about it, he came to me thinking I was going to be angry or that I was going to be mad. But I've messed up plenty of times in my life. I am also an addict in recovery, and the last thing that you need to do is kick a dog when it's down. And I all I could do was tell him that we would first I wanted to know if he had a plan or if he had some other support other than me. And he admitted to me that he had found a therapist and joined a group, which gave me a little bit of relief. But the only thing I could say to him is, I love you and we'll get through this.
Well, one
And
more,
whatever you need from me, I'm willing to give it to you and give you the support that you need to get through this. So,
one more question, then I'll push the boundary a little bit. So, what have you guys got in place then to for when that happens or when those emotions come back again? What have you got in place to mitigate that?
Scott, I'll let
Well,
you take first.
I think there's a few things we have in place. I mean, personally for me, um, I know that I can go if I'm in that moment, and I have been since that point where I've gone to Hillary and said, I need help, or I need you for this, or I always lead with the I need, and whatever that I'm feeling in that moment is what I need to do. Is like, I need to go to see my therapist, or I need to sit down and talk with you, or I need to go outside and go for a walk, to get my head straight. I always lead with that. And she knows when I lead with I need something, that it's something that's now, and she will do anything to support me in that. The other thing is we do check-ins with each other.
Mm.
Hillary's very good about every morning checking in with me and saying, "What can I do for you today?" And with those two things kind of in place, it really kind of balances it out and keeps me in check, where I know that I can go to her when I get to that spot again.
That's good. I commend both of you because most people don't think that through. The dark dog is always around. Like I've had cases in the past 12 months of this case. And Melissa and I have done something very similar. We've got this language of 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 practice and response, code words that are key that we have established that we know is about to enter into a conversation. And so I commend you for that, and I think for your listeners to have that sort of language with and the power of the partner is the other thing that's very evident with the two of you. You can't disqualify the power of having the right partner in your life, and if it's not a spouse, then it's got to be someone external to it. And
Mhm.
I think having those things in place, I'm the same. I'll turn to Melissa and say, "Listen, it's just dark." Well, and she'll always, well, okay, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to put on some EDM music, electric dance music, because I don't know why, but I love the shit out of that stuff when I'm working out. A 60-year-old Gen X are listening to dance music. It's fantastic. And so I get my gym on, and I go and I watch my food, and I watch my water, and I watch all those things, and she will help me gently as wives do, with just how you going through that spirit. And then I've got a couple of mates similar to what you've got, I think, mate, with your support groups, is just being able to do that. So I commend you with that. I commend you for both of that. Having those tools in place, because most people don't have the tools. We think somehow miraculously going to recover. We will manage this for the rest of our days.
Mhm.
And so well done. Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would add to that is we've come to a point where whether it's Scott letting me know or me letting him know, we call each other out on our shit.
Yeah, yeah.
When yeah, we've come to a comfortable enough place that when he sees that I'm struggling or when I see that he's struggling, we similar to a code word, we know how to call each other out on that and
Yeah.
how to bring that focus back onto us. Because there's plenty of times that I'm losing my mind or I'm in a place and I might not just fully see it because I feel like I've got to take care of everybody else and I'm not taking care of me. And he's very good at pointing that out
That's
and
great.
saying,
Yeah.
hey, you need to go take a minute and take care of yourself, and I've gotten comfortable enough where I can let him know that as well. So,
That's very good. Melissa grew up with some really bad eating disorders.
mhm.
And whenever she's stressed, she doesn't eat. So it's the same with us. I don't know if I'll say, eat something, she'll go, oh, okay. I need to eat something," code
Yeah.
word for
Mhm.
like, I haven't eaten. My very caring husband. Here's food.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I forgot. Yeah. Well,
Well,
great.
I
It's
love
been good
that.
talking to you. Bud. Yeah.
No, this has been
Ugh.
fantastic. And we just, again, just thank you so much. And everybody, if you want more information on, what Dr. John is doing out there, check him out on LinkedIn. I'll also put some of his reference and information on the podcast description, so you guys can look that up, information about the foundation and things like that. So if you guys want more or want to reach out to him and find out how you can help, it'll be on that. And we can't just thank everybody enough for tuning in this week. We are so blessed and so grateful that all of you have taken this hour and 15 minutes today out of your busy life to tune into us, to join us in this part of our life and sharing people's messages today. And we really hope that this has resonated with you. That, again, we challenge you to send this episode to a friend, to a family member, to a coworker, or just somebody that you know can benefit from the information shared here today, because we couldn't do this without you. We do this for you. And the only way we can continue to do this is by growing it and by sharing it. So, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in today. And don't forget, between now and then, know that you're a
Big
big
deal.
deal.